Call is now.
Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. Today is Friday, December 5th, 2025, and we are here for the Colorado Forest Health Council Legislative Committee meeting. I am Chair Larimer County Commissioner Jody Shad McNally. Welcome, everybody, and thanks for being here today. So let's do roll call.
Okay, Samantha Albert.
President, good to see you all.
Good to see you, Samantha. Pat Dorsey. Christina Bury.
Morning.
Morning, Christina. Commissioner Jody Shaddock McNally.
Present.
Good morning, Commissioner. Mark Horgan. Nice to see you, Mark. Julie Stensel. Commissioner Veronica Medina.
Good morning.
Morning, Commissioner. And Allison Lurch. I think we might have a few people joining us a little late today, but it's nice to see you all. We do have quorum.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
My computer and my technology this week, the last 2 days, has decided to give me some challenges. So anyway, thank you all for your patience. Thanks for being here today. You know, we're going to have a busy December. We'll have a meeting again next week. So we have a lot to get to, but we're going to do some housekeeping. Let's talk about the minutes. Did anybody have any changes, additions, or concerns about the minutes? If not, I welcome a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
I'd move.
There's a second. Okay, any further discussion? All right, all those in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed. Great. So now those minutes are approved. Let's move on to the next agenda item. Can you just pull up the agenda real quick, Courtney, just so we can remind ourselves in case people don't have that in front of them?
Yes.
Just to make sure everyone can see that. Okay, so today we have quite a bit to get through. That's why we kind of lengthened the meeting a little bit. So, but first, I'm really excited. We have some discussion afterwards, but I think this next presentation will be really important. I got to be on a meeting yesterday and start to hear some of the beginnings of some of this information. So I want to welcome Dan West from the Colorado State Forest Health Service. He is a state entomologist, and he's going to present to us about the pine beetle outbreak and what the steps. And I didn't know, Christina, did you have anything else you wanted to add to that?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just really, really grateful that that Dan and Amanda could be here. Really fortunate at the State Forest Service to have their expertise and scientific expertise and knowledge to deal with this mountain pine beetle outbreak. So just, yeah, I know we're short on time, so just want to express my appreciation for Dan and Amanda and turn it over to them.
And thank you, Amanda. Welcome you as well. I just have only Dan on my list, but I'm glad you're both here. So do you have anything you wanted to share on screen? Dan, did you want to? I do that, and I'll just turn this over to you, and I'll help handle the questions and the hands raised for you.
Thank you, Jody. Yeah, thank you, everyone. I just pulled together a few slides, similar information that I shared with the governor as well. And I'm just going to share my screen here briefly so that everybody can kind of see. Let's see. Hopefully.
Excuse me, while he's pulling that up, can I just mention really quickly to this group, the governor is taking a lead on this right now, so a lot of this information is going to be pretty proprietary. The governor is planning on doing some public announcement, I think, later in December, and so I think the information that we're sharing, I think, should be a very close hold for now, and the governor wants to lead that message, so getting ahead of him would put us in a vulnerable position. So again, just use that with caution. So thanks, everybody.
Good point. Thank you, James. Is everybody able to see the screen in front of you now? Yeah, great. Thank you. Well, good morning, everybody. Thanks again for your time. Thanks for making space for me on the agenda. I just, as has already been described by Jody and others, that, you know, we do are seeing some increase in mountain pine beetle activity along the Front Range. And I just kind of wanted to share, where have we been? I just pulled a few slides together to kind of, I'm a visual learner, and so hopefully this kind of sets the stage for some conversation. But this is where we've been in the state of Colorado, right? This dates back to 1996, when we really started to see the bulk of mountain pine beetle activity was largely in lodgepole pine across our state. And, you know, it affected 3.4 million acres. And so, you know, what's the question, right? How many acres do we have of pine forest in Colorado? And, you know, we could argue about, you know, splitting hairs, but really it's somewhere around 4.1 million forested acres of pine forest in Colorado. So that leaves us with about, you know, 750,000 acres, and the bulk of it is along the Front Range. So the inset histogram shows us where we're sitting just about today. The aerial survey data isn't quite complete. It's still in draft, so I haven't shared those numbers. But again, we're starting to get to that kind of exponential growth curve where we really are starting to see an uptick and where it's really visible. Let's see if I can get this to advance. Again, about 80% of our pine forests were affected for a while, right? And then we had those biblical rains in 2013, which kind of halted that outbreak as it was starting to transition down into the ponderosa pine out of the lodgepole. Just another visual. This is again across the state. This is what it looks like. The red is depicting where we're at today. The gray is kind of acres that were affected in the past. And I'll just kind of point out, right, that not every tree on every acre is affected, but again, it shows us that usually they're, you know, choosing the largest diameter trees, and it shows us the footprint or kind of the area that mountain pine beetle has to work in. If
Can I ask a quick question
by all
right there?
means,
You
yeah.
said something that I hadn't heard before. You say they target the large diameter tree. Is that just kind of their specific species activity? I don't know what the correct, I'm not an entomologist, but was that kind of specific to this pine beetle, or is that kind of specific to pine beetles in general? And so are the bigger trees more in jeopardy than the rest? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I hadn't heard that before. I was curious about that.
No problem. And this goes for everybody. Feel free to interject and ask questions as I'm going. I mean, this is really an information share, so no problem with that. To answer your question, yeah, it's pretty much common across all bark beetles. They're choosing those largest diameter trees first because the food source is greater on those larger diameter trees. And so, of course, they can reproduce and produce more babies in the larger diameter trees. So those are the ones that we would target first. And when we look at all the risk ratings and hazard ratings, it's all gold. The goals are around reducing that diameter. So again, trying to get those large diameter, highest risk trees off the landscape when we're thinking about active management. So yeah, I hope that helps. But no, you know, self-respecting female bark beetle wants to lay her eggs in a spot where there's no food for their babies. And so, you know, the point is they're trying to get the biggest amount of, you know, food source for their offspring. And so just to continue on again, so most of that gray, think about it, right? A lot of what happened in the past was mostly, you know, in more rural, higher elevation lodgepole pine forests. And when we think about that kind of red that we see right there, zoom in along what we're seeing in this current outbreak. I've depicted, so the gray is still on there where we've seen mountain pine beetle in the past. The lighter green is is the lodgepole pine layer, but that darker green is really what I want everybody to kind of key in on, right? That's susceptible host of ponderosa pine that largely was unaffected by previous outbreaks. And so at least the last previous outbreak. And so what does that mean, right? That means that we've got, you know, a lot of dense forest with a lot of susceptible hosts that's up and down the Front Range that can be affected by this outbreak. If we think about what does it look like on the landscape, right? So if we look on the left of your screen, that's I-70. The home that you see on the right is sorry, Mark. Yeah, just shout it out. Go for it.
Yeah, Mr. Morgan, go ahead.
In the past, regional entomologist John Schmidt did a lot of papers on the basal area trigger, on that when it reached a certain point, it kind of was a trigger for activity. Is that what you're seeing now? You know, you're obviously, it's been taking bigger trees. That's been their operandus for a long time. And we're talking about primarily Dendroctonus ponderosa on this? Okay.
Correct. Yep, it's all Dendroctonus ponderosa.
And so his work quite a few years ago was very much a basal area trigger. Is that what you're seeing now then as well?
Yes and no. You know, when John and you know, I did a lot of that work with John. I revisited a lot of those plots and kind of thinking back on, you know, he used a growth stocking level, which is a little bit difficult to relate back to kind of basal area, but thinking back on kind of like, you know, where are most of our stands most susceptible, it really is a basal area trigger, of course, and anything really greater than about 75 square feet of basal area is where we're seeing a lot of the activity. Well, that's just about everything along the Front Range, right? And not only that, all bets are kind of off right now because the temperature and precipitation that we've been getting is just so variable, right? This is completely different than when John was doing that work back in the 90s. And really, what we've seen is a string together of several years where the precipitation is below or well below average. It kind of makes all of these trees, you know, so susceptible. We're seeing right now what we're calling dry attack, where the trees don't have any or very little resin to push these bark beetles out. And it's just because we just have such a dearth of precipitation. So yeah, great question. There are some hazard risk ratings that are out there as far as basal areas that probably need to be updated. In fact, I've been working on a paper with Joe Legan out of Montana to try to hone in on a more contemporary number. But yeah, pretty much anything that's greater than about 75 or 80 square feet of basal area is pretty much getting hammered, or we're considering it at risk.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Just to kind of keep going here, this is what it looks like, right, on the landscape. And so thinking about, okay, you know, what you see in the center of the screen is what occurred or what was truly attacked in 2023. They're dead standing without needles in 2024. Then, of course, this picture was taken in September. So this is just outside of El Rancho. Of course, you can see the home there. But, of course, this is very visible on I-70 and very much in your face. If we then go one step further and look to the north, you can kind of see, right? I'm less worried about the dead standing gray trees. I'm much more worried about those red trees and all the pockets, or what we kind of liken it to be a spot fire all across the landscape. And again, that's I-70 right there. So this is just west of Evergreen to orient folks. If we take it one step further and then look back on that hillside, right? For every red tree that you see in this image, there's anywhere between 2.5 and 10 green trees that are currently infested that will turn red next year. So I surveyed all those properties that are up on the hill, as well as this one down here, as well as many other in this area, and trying to figure out where are we headed? What is this looking like in the near future? So it will very much be visible and very much be in our faces along high traffic corridors as this continues to build. I just want to revisit this map again and just kind of remind everybody again, this is where we're at, right? The bulk of it is just west of Denver, maybe, you know, a swath through Boulder, arguably a little bit in northern, you know, kind of Boulder County, southern Larimer County, but the bulk of it is really south, leaning towards Park County and Jefferson County, Clear Creek County. Those are the biggest impacted counties right now. If we think about what is the average distance of a Dendroctonus, and there's multiple papers that have been published on kind of average flight distances for a lot of these things. If we apply that to this outbreak as we're seeing the data sit today, this is what that half-mile radius might look like. Now, I don't want to kind of, you know, fearmonger and kind of say, you know, this is what it's going to look like, but I do want to say that not every tree on every acre will be affected, and the infestation will be variable across the landscape, but likely this is only a half mile from the current outbreaks that we're seeing in population centers that we're seeing. Most likely we're going to see some activity within that half-mile area around the current activity. Go ahead, Jody.
Thanks. So I see that, you know, my hometown of Longmont there, but I don't see much of Larimer County. That, as I understand, the southern part of my county does have some outbreak. So, and I'm just getting kind of closer to the Rocky Mountain. There's some near the Rocky Mountain National Park area, and I see this map is kind of honed in on that Denver area. Will you have are you seeing a similar pattern in the southern part of Larimer as well?
Yeah, and I can share here just as soon as this is done, kind of what that looks like, a more broader map, if that would help
Okay.
everybody. But of course,
Thank
yeah,
you.
I'm happy to share some maps and stuff with you, like we talked about yesterday. I've got a bunch that depict kind of this northern area as well. And then if we also apply, most Androctonus fly within a half mile to a mile and a half. If we look at what that might look like, and maybe it will take a couple of years. We don't know what the rate of spread is going to be. And of course, there's so many variables that play into the rate of spread, right? Temperature, precipitation, available host, how the population develops over time. But with the dearth of precipitation and higher temperatures that we've been seeing, it's not unlikely that we might see kind of a broader spread, and that's what this might look like. I've clipped this to the ponderosa pine forest type just so that we can kind of get a picture of like, where might this go? And really looking at it, up and down the whole Front Range, wherever there's basically mountain pine beetle, we can see that there's plenty of susceptible host and plenty of acreage for mountain pine beetle to continue to grow and build, kind of spreading its footprint, if you will. And so, this is just some work based on some of the scientific literature about how far beetles will fly. Our partners with the U.S. Forest Service, they have produced something similar, looking at, kind of flight times. They have put some years on it and said, well, if it spreads, within 1 kilometer every single year, this is maybe what that map might look like. And so just that adds a little bit more credence and a little bit more kind of clarity to what we might see over time. And of course, again, not every tree on every acre is going to be affected, and it's not every tree on every acre along I-70 is affected right now, but it is very much visible. And, the publics are, of course, really starting to key in on some of this, not to mention some of the WUI. A lot of our WUI is in that kind of, low elevation ponderosa pine on the toe of these slopes. So that's what I provided for the team here. And, of course, I have a tremendous amount more information if we so need. I'm going to stop sharing here. And yeah, I think that stopped, right? And so, just, of course, happy to share more information if we need, if this body needs. I mostly just wanted to kind of start to share some of this information. I know we're short on time, so I don't want to eat up a ton of time, but, some of the things that I'm really hearing from POAs, land, the property owners, as well as Jefferson County, Boulder County, some of the folks that I've been working with is, one, we've got a dearth of information out there. So the outreach and education piece really is that we're working on and trying to beef that up here at the State Forest Service, or I am. The other piece of it is wood movement, right? So a lot of sort yards and things like that are not open. They will not take hot logs. And so that's a real challenge right now, right? And so trying to work with some of the elected officials at the county level to figure out barriers is kind of our next step, and trying to figure out how do we open some of this, right? Look at Gilpin County, right? They have accepted hot logs. However, they've indicated that perhaps next year they're going to shut that off. And that would really create this kind of gap, right? It would leave, if you're in Park County, if you're in most of Jefferson County, there is nowhere to take any infested wood. And so it's just kind of a challenge. That's one piece that I see. And then the other piece that a lot of these POAs in elected, county areas are asking for is to say, what kind of incentive do we have for getting people to treat these landscapes and getting some of this infested wood off the land? And also a challenge, right? And so with the sunset, and James could talk about some of this with some of the past House bills that Dan Gibbs has helped get through, that, give credit for some of the blue stained wood. Some of those are sunsetting. And so kind of really trying to figure out, where can we actually go with an incentive program to kind of get the land treated, as well as where to take the wood, are kind of the two barriers that I'm seeing right now. And of course, the cost, the cost for a lot of these places is exorbitant. But, just as an anecdotal piece, I just want to share, we've been working in Soda Creek subdivision, which is just outside of Evergreen. They are an affluent community. However, one landowner that has many acres, he spent over $100,000 to treat his land, but they did the work in July and August, and that's right when the beetles are flying. And so I was walking with him, and every single residual tree was infested. He's going to have a denuded, there will be no more trees on his landscape. And so this is going to be bigger and bigger until we get some information out there about, hey, you've got to use an ISA certified forester to come out here and figure out, okay, when do we get this stuff? When do we do the treatment? When, figuring out how do we get this kind of information to the right people so that we're not kind of pouring good money after bad money, if that makes any sense.
Dan,
Thank you. Yeah, Mr. Morgan, go ahead.
I have several questions, but they're all in a similar vein, and I'm really glad that you're looking where you're looking right now, because my whole questions for today was, how do we approach this? And temperature on either end of and temperature and moisture, as you brought up, we're looking for ways, obviously, to kill beetles. And as we harvest them and we manufacture them, in the years past, if we chip them, is that enough damage? Survivability in chips, if we're going to be moving biomass around, are we going to get a surviving population? And if sour felling, if we cut right after the beetles fly, so we essentially accelerate the dehydration of the tree, is there any possibility there? Also, a lot of these chips go into composting. We're looking at 155 degrees for 12 days for like most dairy compost or whatever. I assume that should do the job. Everything else turns out to be inert after that. But I guess research on temperature on both ends of it, mechanical harvest in New Zealand, they developed rotary harvesting heads. So as you ran the tree through the machine, it actually pretty well debarked it at the same time. So I'm assuming this, removing the canvia layer should be pretty much 100% successful. So if we could look at harvesting heads that did that. So I was thinking mechanical disturbance, temperature both up and down. If I realized that we're not going to all sit around and wait for the really cold October to kill all the bugs. I get that, and I've always kind of known that. But what happens if we get a cold temperature and we've already dehydrated the bark? Do we have to roll? In the past, they were battling beetles by rolling trees, exposing them to the sun, and they had some success, but it wasn't really. And in 1980, I put 60,000 trees under plastic up in Summit County, and then you guys gassed them. And then the ones we couldn't gas, we hit with Lindane. But I guess I'm coming at this from how can we be successful at killing them, not broadcasting them, and what tools that we have right now can we use, mechanical or otherwise, to achieve this. And so I'm sure you got information on, I'm looking at moisture content, temperature, mechanical disturbance, anything you got there.
And then James can go after you answer, Dr. West. Thank you.
Yeah, are you good if I just rip James and just kind of give some responses here?
Yep.
I didn't mean to raise my hand, sorry.
Oh, you did. Right, go ahead,
Yeah.
Dr. West.
I'll take this just in a couple of steps just so that we don't eat up too much time. But as far as chipping, it's fully acceptable. Most recommendations say one inch by 1 inch by X, right? So it can be 6 feet long, but as long as it's coming out of the end of that chipper as being 1 inch by 1 inch, that's the acceptable diameter range to kill any kind of both Ips and Androctonus. So both mountain pine beetle and the secondary beetles that can go in there.
Is that by dehydration?
Yeah, it basically, dries out that phloem layer to the point that there's no viable food source left for them. So that's a good point. The debarking piece, of course, that is the acceptable practice, right? And I've got some pictures dating all the way back to the CCC days where, in the 1930s, we were debarking trees. That still works. That's still acceptable. And, there are some advanced equipment like flail debarkers and stuff like that that certainly can do the job, but that's at a much larger scale than what we're looking at for a small subdivision or something like that. As far as those heads and all of that, yes, that's key. If we could just basically get that thing disturbed that phloem layer disturbed, it disrupts the life cycle and pretty much ends this story for any bark beetles that are in those trees. And then lastly, the timing piece. So my recommendation is if you can do the work as soon as the beetles are done flying, right? And that's why we're doing all this trapping, is so that we can identify when the beetles are actually done flying, so that we can get people to say, okay, now's your window. Go to work in the fall. If you can get that work done in the fall, you're bet, and winter. I mean, honestly, use that snow layer as a protective layer, but do the work early in the fall if you can, because all those monoterpenes that are inside that pondo and lodgepole, right? As soon as you put a cutter or head or a chainsaw or anything into it, those trees, those 20 carbon compound monoterpenes are coming out, right? It smells like a pondo. And so of course that just brings it in. Well, that stuff dissipates over time. And of course, if you're doing the work in March, April, May, I really say try not to, let the beetles limit your work. But we do have tools in the toolbox, right? If you're doing that work in May and beetles are about to emerge 2 months later, we can use verbenone and we can use some semiochemicals to kind of blanket the residual trees so that we can keep those beetles moving and save some of those residual trees. So yeah, the best timing is fall, but I try to tell people, man, get the work done and we'll figure out tools in the toolbox to keep that work going and reduce the amount of beetle activity in the spring.
What temperature does it take to be lethal above? How hot do we need to get them?
Yep. So 120 degrees is the standard. And of course, there's some on either side of that can, come out. But if you're composting things to 155, you're golden. You got plenty of wiggle room there, no problem. And then the other thing that you mentioned was plastic. And I kind of don't recommend solar treatments to anybody. I know they're out there and people really want to do it because it's something that landowners can do, but the reality is that nobody's going out there to turn their logs and roll them and then re-plastic them and keep it going. It just doesn't work. And not only that, they use a cheap, thin plastic that bark beetles can chew through and the game's over, right? So I pretty much, although it is a recommended tool that people can use, in maybe other parts of, the United States or something, I just don't recommend them here in Colorado. I see more stands that have microplastics and plastics just blowing around because people don't go back out and remove the plastic. So it's really not a viable option.
We're too windy in this state, and you're exactly right. And I was saying, if that was going to show up as a tool. The reason I'm looking from the temperature side of things, you think 120, because there's essentially a big thing going on in the industry right now is dry kill firewood. We never used to kiln dry firewood anywhere around here, but kiln drying firewood, the economics of that aren't good, but they're not impossible. But if you're getting more and more people are asking for it from the pest side of things, what it takes to kill the individual pests. So if you add that benefit back to the drying green wood, it almost becomes economically feasible to kiln dry firewood, do the basket kilns and stuff that way. And it's been happening a lot in the East. And I think they've been using that quite a bit on emerald ash borer now that everything is coming up. They're going kiln drying on the firewood. So that's why I was looking at either frying these bugs or freezing them or dehydrating them one way or another. But
the freezing piece isn't too viable anymore, right? So the supercooling temperature of mountain pine beetle is -35. That's under the bark temperature, and that's Fahrenheit. And anymore
dehydrated first.
Yeah.
Do they freeze easier? That's the question I'm asking.
Yep, that is true. And of course, there's a whole bunch of variability in the literature on how low to get that down to, right? Whether it's 14 or 6%, there's a whole bunch that are out there. And I feel like getting something down to 6% is just about impossible, right? So although it's dry in Colorado, it's really a challenge. So yeah, kind of trying to figure out like, how do we dry it? And then the freezing component, I think, would be a challenge, but maybe not doable. I don't consider the cold temperatures overwintering mortality anymore in my algorithms for, are we going to see a reduction in mountain pine beetle based on a cold winter or something? They have too much glycerols built up in the middle of the winter. It's really, they're most vulnerable in the fall and then in the spring when they're either building up that glycols or synthesizing the glycol. So that antifreeze that they're using to get through the winter, it's got to be a big swing early or late.
If you use hold this to one more question. If one of the techniques we use is if we call sour felling, where you fell in bunch trees and as early on as possible. And the key to that is dehydrating, and then say whatever forest product we're moving, then at that point, when we process it, we've gotten rid of a lot of moisture, and we leave the limbs on, because limbs on a tree down obviously will draw a lot of moisture out of the trunk. And so sour felling and then processing either through a chipper or a delimber later on. Is there any literature out there on the success of that? Well, I guess by helping to dehydrate that tree real early, is there a tool there to kill bugs and reduce weight, which is a transportation problem for hauling material? And that's the thing I'm looking for, Dan.
Yep. So both of those, so we recommend even for, contractors in the timber industry and everybody else, right, to try to get their chainsaws and whatever else through that bark as quick as you can to get it dried out as quick as you can. And of course, to buck it up if you can, so that you can start to get that phloem layer as dry as possible. And is there some literature? Yes, there is, some literature on kind of once that wood starts to check, all that phloem layer is pretty much so dried out that it's no longer a viable source for any bark beetles in it. But again, and the movement piece, getting it dried out, of course, is super important. But man, at the volume at which we're about to be inundated with, I think we're going to have a lot of log decks and a lot of wood sitting around to try to figure out how do we kind of get this stuff dried out, debarked, and get it to a point where it's no longer viable for bark beetles. And
yeah, so I'm going to have to wrap it up there.
Yeah.
But I had one great conversation, and Dr. West, appreciate you being here today. It's been really, really informational and certainly adding a little bit to my anxiety, quite honest, because I'm like, so I have one quick question. If we can maybe have you share that with Christina or someone, or back to Courtney, or actually two. Number one, you mentioned about incentives for the bloom stayed wood, or extending some of that. Maybe that is legislation that just needed to be extended a little bit. And I'm just curious about that, because we're talking about legislative priorities, because that sounds like that wouldn't be a fiscal note. I'm just kind of curious about that. And then secondly, it sounds like there's a lot of information that landowners need to know, and what they need to kind of understand how to do this. Could you share that story with the landowner that spent a lot of money to really not have the outcomes he hoped for? And so I think that sounded like that was an educational thing where he kind of did the timing wrong. So, and I don't know how this is coming out. You said the governor's kind of taken over the lead and spreading this out, and James reminded us it's all proprietary, but that sounds like there's a lot of information and education for folks. Wondering how are you guys have money in the budget to help get the word out? How does this look? Is it going to be a public information campaign, videos to kind of educate landowners, so they don't try to do all the tarping and the plastic and think that's going to work and those kinds of things? It just sounds like there's a lot of important information to get across the state, and I'm wondering if that's another legislative thing or effort, and how we support you on that. So maybe you can think about that and some ideas, Christina, and maybe get back to us and let us know kind of those kinds of things the Forest Health Council can maybe look at shifting. Maybe we have to kind of all hands on deck with this. So just curious, because this is kind of our forest house. So maybe we can get the answers later, and because we're talking legislative priorities, but I know I appreciate you being out there to information. Yeah, so information about more today. Thanks, Jane. Because I just want to, we want to talk, especially as county commissioners, we're going to start getting a lot of questions. And so I feel like the more information we have, the more we can lead it at when we get asked those questions, we can be informed and give information to landowners or to our municipalities or watersheds. So I'm just, that's what I'm looking for. I think I mentioned that yesterday. I just wanted to say, I really appreciate your expertise, and I appreciate everyone being here today. And I appreciate Amanda being here as well. Your expertise is just invaluable in this, and I just let us know how we can also support you. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the time. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for the answers.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Thank you.
All right. Hold on. Someone see, I'm in a meeting. So next time that was great and really helpful. And I heard some things that could be something we could put on that list there, Courtney. Extending some of that blue wood. James, you know more about that maybe Dan had extended for the blue stained wood. I have my basement's made with blue stained wood, my trim and all that. So there's that, just something to think about. Anyway, next item on the agenda is just talking about, is it just the questions and follow-ups or any of the presentations, Courtney, or is it just the debates?
Yes, next on the agenda is discussion and questions about 2025 presentations. For any
So,
follow-up.
James just left. All right, I was going to have him share what he had shared. So I put this on the agenda. We've had a lot of presentations today. And just appreciate, thanks for sharing that. If you guys want to click on that. So some of our ideas that we already have. And if there's any other questions or presentations that for our discussion that you still feel like you needed information for, that might be an important thing to see if we can get into our discussions or get answered for our deliberations coming up this week, next week, and how that goes for the calendar. When's our last day that we put on for deliberation, Courtney, just for a reminder?
To open up the calendar again. Let's see. Sorry, my computer's going a little slow.
No worries.
Okay. So we have a deliberation meeting on January 9th, and then on January 23rd, finalize recommendations to share with the council.
Great. So, lots of time to think about this. So if anybody have any items or thoughts that they wanted to have more information for, or questions for all of our, and if you look at that document, there's some of the presentations that we've had, the Wildfire Watershed Initiative for Resilient Colorado, the CSU, the State Forest Service, the Natural Resources, the Outdoor Strategy, the Wildfire Watersheds, the Northern Water and Watershed, the Nature Conservancy, and Excel. And then today we can add probably the Pine Beetle. So great. And then we have some of those 30-year vision themes, which I think is important to kind of center what we're trying to focus on. That having that is also helping us guide our priorities as the mindset and culture shift, the functioning forest ecosystems, the resilient watersheds, fire adaptive forests and communities, cross-boundary collaboration, and diverse, consistent funding and forest products. So with that, I'll open it up. Any thoughts or comments on that list? Do you want to put that up list, Courtney, so people can kind of maybe watch as we add to it? Or I have it up, but I don't know if anyone, Mr. Morgan?
Yes, I guess I wonder what part we can play in so many of the things that we've had presentations on, and all, if you trace them back, like this new bug outbreak and everything, they all come back to the density of our forests. It comes, almost every problem that we have going right now is what we've got a surplus of trees, and density of a whole lot of our stands is almost too high, and we have a trade-off going because it is our forests that make the state such a destination. People like to see large, healthy forests, but we are overstocked. So I think the question that I'm getting back to is, our fire problems come from overstocking. Our pine beetle outbreaks come from overstocked forests. I think any solutions that we work on need to be basal area or volume based or whatever, but we have to have, I think we need active management. People don't want to look at it and see that it's active management. I think they want to see the result, but I don't think they want to see the process. And that's a tough problem, but I think as a group, that's the one we're looking at. They want to see a healthy forest that you get from active management, but they don't like the profits. And I think that's a real challenge for us. And I don't know what we can do. That's not true. I have some ideas, but I think we have to look at things legislatively that way, what we can do to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. I heard biomass challenges again, so that's what I'm hearing. Christina, thanks for raising your hand.
Yeah, thank you. So this question is kind of more for Mark, for you, and just your perspective on this, especially as we're talking a lot about the Front Range, which is where I've spent a lot of my career. And I mean, absolutely, like, public perception about active management is a huge barrier. But the barrier that I feel like on the Front Range is access. Like, those are just tough acres to access. I mean, there's wilderness and like roadless and steep, and it's so some of this I struggle with, especially in those landscapes, which is, and maybe hearing from you on the industry side, I struggle with what is a legislative fix and like what is accessibility and challenges. And so just having that understanding, I think for this group and just for me, it would be helpful for someone who is a little bit skeptical about what legislative fixes can solve access issues.
Okay, I have, obviously, I'm not the magician here, but I have a couple ideas. One of which is you're hitting two key points. One of the largest barriers, like you said, is access. And so people don't have a lot of problems with forest management. They have a lot of problems with building a lot of roads to do forest management. So that's a trigger factor for a lot of folks. And then, so I keep coming back to, I think we need to expand a lot of treatments on the ground that do not require removal of products. There's a lot of things we can do. One of the questions that I was asking today was mechanical disturbance to deal with pine beetle. And what I got for an answer, I think, is pretty much my experience as well. I think Dan's exactly correct, that you can masticate or chip material and successfully treat pine beetles. You're also successfully treating your wildfire conditions. So legislatively, the other answer to your question that I have is that we have an ignorance deficit or an intelligence deficit. We've got to make people understand that this is not all bad, and that the other thing is a good infrastructure is also an asset. So from a timber industry standpoint, if you have the infrastructure, then you can manage, you can remove the products that need to be removed and don't remove the products that don't need to be removed, because it's a huge freight bill. And from the industry side of things, you've got facilities that utilize these products. And personally, from the industry side, my opinion, I think if we try to remove too much biomass, it will overwhelm us and we will not be able to treat our forests. So I think we've got to we need a filter there where we remove the biomass that needs to be removed. We put material, leave it in the forest if it can help us, and then have an infrastructure system that can haul the products that we can move. And I think that's when I see the challenges that we have every day here in this state, they come under those three categories. And so I would suggest I see some new investment again in southeast United States on bio oil and all of these products. what I have trouble with bio oil and some of the biochar products is they are dependent upon the sale of carbon credits on a world market. And I would hate to stake the health of our forests on that market, because I'm not sure it's going to hold up. I think we need more localized in-house solutions where we can do. I just don't think that market's going to hold up. And I think investing tons of money to make bio-oil to put back in the ground and sell the carbon credits on the European market is a real long chain for me to get our forests managed. And I'm suspicious of it. Maybe that's because I'm an old goat and I've gotten suspicious in my old age. I don't know, but I don't like the smell of it. But I think legislatively, work on our infrastructure, determine what materials can be left on the ground, what fuels can we manipulate, and which ones do we have to haul, and support the products that we do make to where they're economical. Does that answer your question?
Yes, that is helpful to think about it in those categories. Yes, thank you.
Yeah. So I just want to pause and welcome Commissioner Mina, who's new to the Forest Health Council. And I know she just joined us, so welcome, Commissioner. And we're just having our discussion after presentation and discussing some of our legislative priorities for 2027. We've already had and introduced our 2026 and had those approved. And so we're just discussing some ideas from all the many presentations we've done this year. So welcome. So what we do is we raise our hand if you have questions or want to add in. So now we'll recognize you. So, all right. So what I'm hearing also is something that we've been wrestling with again, and I see it's on here, is just the biomass and then what do you leave on the landscape and what do you take and use? But then I heard today, oh, she left. Now I heard today that, hi, Nina. So now but then also I hear, local situations, local control about what might work for certain parts of some counties and certain parts of the Front Range. And then we heard from Dr. West that some of the sort yards are not accepting any of these hot logs. So then does that need a different strategy? But I don't know if that's for us as a legislative or Forest Health Council about strategies or policies. And I think your question, Christina, was what would be a legislative priority and what is really a recommendation from us, and what is also just something that we bring back to the full council to talk, how, and I'm just looking to Courtney and Allison, where do we weigh in here with this outbreak? Is it recommendations or suggestions, or we just wait and see and maybe throw out some ideas from what we've heard? I don't know, because there's all these subject matter experts that are tackling this. So where do you see our lane or avenue in this particular situation? Christina.
Yeah, thank you. I do think allowing some time, like James said, we'll have a lot more information especially after today. And the Gov does want to lead a lot of the communication about this that will be occurring in December. So I do think things will become more clear about how this group and the Forest Health Council can engage in, I would say, a few weeks, definitely by January. And I think getting answers to, we'll follow up, me, James, and Dan West and Amanda, certainly on some of the legislative fixes that Dan mentioned about the blue stain wood incentives. I think there are some small wins that this group could focus on, and certainly will be able to come back and answer those questions for this group. I think that would be helpful in informing decisions for 2027.
Right. So before I let Mr. Morgan speak, I just want to put it out there that we have other things we can start talking about. Maybe we need to put a pin in this in the parking lot till we get more information, since we have till the end of January to kind of get more information and see how this unfolds. So, because we could spend the next hour and we have just a lot of time. We only have a little bit of time left today, but I think this was really important to get this on our radar to understand the scope and scale that is probably complicating our already urgent needs. So Mr. Morgan, thank you for all your expertise here today.
Couple real quick comments. First one is blue stain wood. In the wood market, blue stain is carried on the cilia, the hairs of the legs of the mountain pine beetle, and it only goes into the sapwood. So basically our blue stain is a defect in the overall world lumber market. If it's blue stained wood, it's actually a negative. It puts it in a lower grade. But if you get enough blue stain, we made a niche market out of it here in Colorado in the West. And if it's blue enough, people use it as paneling and they like it. I'm looking, all the wall behind me is blue stain here, paneling in my office. But so it is a market, but it is a niche market, because if you're down in the South, they spend a lot of money to keep their logs from staining up in the deck before they saw them, because they don't want to get it as a defect. I think the other thing is that I personally have been involved. Man, I'm going to show my age here. This was my 4th bug war. I mean, we did a lot of bugs in 69, 70. I was doing bugs down in Summit County and thousands of trees in 1980. We did this last bug war, and now we're going to go at it again. I think a real key here is we've learned a lot every time, and we got a lot of great information. And listening to Dan, I was really helpful and hopeful that he had been involved in the last one. We've learned a lot of these hard lessons. We know what works and doesn't work. So that's what I was coming back to. We've got to educate the administrators and the people, and all of these always come back to tied to total volume of timber on the forest. That's where our fire problems come. That's where our bug problems come. And I think we as a group can weigh in on the educational process there. And that's why I beat you poor people to death. And I thank you on my educational endeavors. I really do. And I think that's the key. And I think your legislative breakfast is a great idea. And that's why
Yeah.
I'm willing to contribute to that. I think take it and run with it.
Yeah, I'm really glad that we're doing that. That's something that we do as commissioners, and I've done with some other organizations. And so that was something that, I said, hey, we got to first show them and tell our story. Always got to tell our stories, and then also show that what they've invested in some of these COSWAP and Furworm and all these other organizations have done tremendous work, and also to understand the importance of what we're doing to kind of just the importance of the forest. But a lot of times there's a big focus on housing, but this is really important if we're going to have another big outbreak. But that was the reason for my question from Dr. West is, I don't know what that's a legislative, there's no funding, but what is the mechanism for getting the information out to the right folks to help, make sure folks understand there's a specific way to kind of deal with this. But let's put a placeholder in it. Let's move on to, back, because we have just a little bit of time left about, so I just want to move back. I don't hear anything from anybody else about any other topics they want more information on from our presentations. We can always go back and look at the videos. Were there any burning questions that you had that you needed to have maybe more in-depth answers, or go back to that? The other thing I was wondering, Courtney, was we had asked those 4 or 5 questions from all of our presenters, and some of them had sent maybe back written answers. And I didn't know if we had that, you had those collected, or if there's a way we could collect some of those. Some of them had said them in the presentations, and I'm not suggesting we go back or anyone do that, but I'm wondering if some of them had sent questions back with those 5 questions.
I think a few people sent in answers. I know the COSWAP presentation I did, and I think Tori from CPW and Chris Sturm did as well. I will go check to see if anyone else sent in answers. I think most people just shared during the meeting, and so those would be in the meeting notes for people to read. I will make sure though that the answers from the DNR staff are passed along.
Great. Esther had it in her slides. She did. So, okay. So I just thought that'd be also helpful to throw that onto maybe this document for us to go back and, because we had specifically asked those questions for ideas and suggestions. And then Mr. Morgan, you had your hand raised.
Yes, on that presentation by Xcel Energy, I found that fascinating, and I'm wondering if they have done more, or any of our agencies have done more to include, essentially alter their management prescriptions to better protect power lines on our forest to limit the number of fires that we're getting. Is there a mechanism out there? I guess I'm looking for, is that already done in planning by the State Forest Service, Federal Forest Service? Those people have a place at the table when they're doing their layouts for their silviculture prescriptions for cutting timber. Because in reality, that's where it needs to be done. It can be included that way at really no additional cost. So if we can do it right there, if we can do it in the planning stage, can we better protect that infrastructure? And I guess I've been kind of doing a little bit of looking for more information there, but that's one that I would really like to learn more about.
Sorry, Courtney, do you think that's a question we could send to the presenters or for Julie and get maybe some answers back?
I think, yeah, we could send that to the presenters. Mark, would you mind putting your question in the chat so I can copy it over clearly?
Do you have, I guess I would say it this way, as an industry, do you have a corridor where you can affect prescriptions as they're written for management on public lands? I know, I'm not a wordsmith, but that's the thrust of it is there a point at which they can say, we think this needs to be done to protect this? Have they got a place at the table, basically, when they're doing the forest planning?
And you're talking about like utilities specifically, like does Xcel Energy have that leverage?
Well, basically protecting the electrical grid on the forest so that we aren't causing fires. I mean, they're living in fear for all these huge lawsuits from electrical caused forest fires. I toured some of them out in California, and we've got a lot simpler solution here. We got shorter trees. They've got a real problem out there. If they were going to protect the right of ways, they'd have to clear cut the place.
Okay.
But here, do they have a place? Is there a way where they can affect the planning?
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, I will pass that on.
Christina.
Yes, thank you. It was more to just from the State Forest Service side to address Mark Morgan's question. I think with the State Forest Service, I do think that there's still more opportunities to help support the utilities, and we're actively pursuing those. I know Xcel and some of the rural electric, co-ops are getting more engaged in some of the collaboratives, so I think that's great. I'm happy to hear, though, that you specifically mentioned public lands, because I think that that's where probably some of the barriers are. And I think that there could be more exploration with Xcel and some of the utilities on what are those barriers for them to be able to manage a wider area within the corridor. So I don't know if that's helpful or not, but just, yeah, wanted to answer from the State Forest Service perspective that we could be coordinating more. And I do see that picking up, and I would like more engagement from the utility side of things with the State Forest Service and collaborating. And I'm happy to make that happen.
I was
Great.
impressed.
Go ahead, Mr. Morgan. Sorry.
I was impressed with the scope of the utilities planning. I mean, when you really look at what they'd already done and what they spent, I see a powerhouse of information and ability there, and I want to harness it to get you guys to help you do your forest management and get the two together. And I love the term, and I hate the term. It's a love-hate relationship, collaboration. Well, here's your chance. You take power, the power ends up eventually on private ground, and here's our chance. And I think if they've just got, and I'm happy to hear that the State Forest Service, I expected that. They've got a place at the table there. Can we get them a place at the table with the feds? And if we're going to make suggestions, that's one I'd make.
So when you start talking about this, I'm thinking about our 2026 priority that was picked up by the Welfare Matters Review Committee, the Good Neighbor Authority. And we asked to expand that to add the other partners and some of the definitions and codify that. So I'm wondering if that's something to add this conversation into that legislation. I don't know where that's at or who's writing that. Do we have an update on that? That's my question. So since that was a priority out of the Welfare Matters Review Committee, they only had two. One was to renew themselves, and then it was that Good Neighbor Authority that we had asked. So I'm curious about that.
Live, I can check with James on the status of it as it goes into legislative season. But as far as I know, I think it's still supported and moving forward. How it relates to utility corridors, I don't have a clear answer for that today.
I'm just curious. I'm wondering if that's something, you know, since we're moving and that's kind of an overlap there.
Yeah.
Just right. So I'm just curious about that. I just wanted to, but I think for the next year, this year, I think that's something to kind of ponder. Okay, so from all of you, as any legislative ideas that popped in your head, let's just put it this way. Forget about, and I know we have the fiscal note. I'm just saying, just ideas without worrying about fiscal notes or anything. What legislative ideas? Because I just want to work from letting your brains kind of think big picture without limitations, and we can discuss those as we go on for the next few weeks. What do you think legislative from anything from any of the presentations that stuck in your head or kind of popped out for you to think about? From Christina or Allison, Mr. Morgan. Mr. Morgan's, always such a great expert on the biomass and the density. OEDIT, any thoughts on your expertise? Samantha.
Yeah, Jody, especially listening to Dr. West's presentation and just the kind of conversation about incentivizing businesses, especially, I just wonder what opportunities there are for OEDIT as an agency to look at supporting like some of these specific initiatives. The agency has a lot of incentives and a lot of funding that is general, but some programs recently, especially with housing after Prop 123, have been pretty focused. So I'm just curious if maybe there's an opportunity on like the housing and timber side of things or incentives, like we talked about listing wood. It's very ambiguous right now in my mind, but just maybe something worth looking into.
I think that's a great point. There is some funding there, and maybe because we have a meeting next week, can you kind of ponder that over the next few days and maybe send that to Courtney to add that onto the agenda? That how can we utilize resources that maybe are there that we haven't tapped into yet or thought about to help with this urgent new matter. So I think that's a great idea. Let's see. Christina, I want to pick on you a little bit. You've been through all these presentations and you presented. And I know, you guys are doing a lot, but was there something that you thought of that maybe was help with something that we could, as a big picture, push as a legislative idea to kind of refine and work on?
One thing that I think has been really powerful that's come from this group and the Forest Health Council is even the retention of the existing funding for COSWAP and Furworm and HFVC. So again, a lot of acronyms, but FIRWORM is Forest Restoration Wildfire Risk Mitigation Program, and Healthy Forest Vibrant Communities. Healthy Forest Vibrant Communities is one of our more flexible funding sources. And I think that in itself has been extremely beneficial. We have these great programs. So just from my perspective, I think just given the current budget situation, I want to be mindful and never push or ask for too much. But I think we have great programs in place. And so certainly maintaining and supporting those. With the mountain pine beetle stuff, I think that will require some additional thought. But I think there's more to come on that. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, and yeah, I know that's kind of maybe something we can put on as maybe a given for every year is maintain the funding. I know it's not a recommendation, but to be able to keep the programs that we have in place that have shown and have great data that they're very effective. Allison, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thanks everyone. And sorry that I've been in and out this morning. One thing that I keep coming back to is, and that is either a low or no cost, is the power of collaborating. I'm looking at you, Mark Morgan, because I'm going to say it. The power of collaborating between our state funding sources. We've seen a lot of great success between COSWAP and Wildfire Ready Watersheds. Pairing, ensuring that where we're doing strategic planning through Wildfire Ready Watersheds can also be met with potential funding for on-the-ground implementation of forest health and wildfire mitigation efforts as well. And so that's what's really swirling in my mind right now, Commissioner, and all of you, is a way that we as a council can support these types of efforts. Really, it makes the money go farther, right? And it makes us continue to be very strategic in where we put our investments. And so that's the biggest one that's coming to my mind, Commissioner.
I think that's a great point. We call it kind of blended and braided funding. And then also I'm thinking about our Leveraging and Resources Committee. I'm wondering if we have a meeting, next week or the next week. I'm wondering if we can send them a question from our committee to ask. We're thinking about a high level strategy about this collaboration and blending and braiding this funding. So I don't know, Allison, could you maybe type in the chat that question? So maybe we can, or maybe so we can send that to the Leveraging Resources Committee to have them kind of chime in on that as well, because that's kind of been their focus. And I'm attending those meetings as well. But I think we have been exploring that. And I think that would be really important to maybe collaborate on that. Commissioner Waters, your hand's raised.
Hi, thank you so much. And hi, everyone. I'm Nina Waters, really new and kind of trying to jump both feet deep into the deep end. So I just want to echo some of Allison's points, because I think, we've been deeply involved here in Summit, at least from my perspective, with the Wildfire Ready Watersheds planning. And I think that there is definitely a nexus to how that funding works, as well as the infrastructure funding and how that ties together. Something that I've been thinking a lot about is how our Safe Streets for All grant that we received from the Federal Transportation Authority administration and the Wildfire Ready funding, and how those interact, and how can we build a system that will help leverage those dollars. And so the Leveraging Resources Committee feels like a great place to start. I also am curious, and while this is the Forest Health Council, and this is something that I'm just kind of spitballing, and so and I don't have a lot of coffee in me, so roll with me here, but how forest health and how that ecology of quality forest health impacts watersheds, and how that also impacts our grasslands, because that is something that's also constantly coming up, or these grass fires. You look at Boulder and everything like that, and I know there's a lot of money for, the agricultural industry for upgrades to their watersheds and things like that, but kind of where does that sit? And I'm just curious to know more and see if there's something that we can be thinking about, legislatively in order to improve both those outcomes. And so, yeah. And then insurance. I mean, I think that that's something that I'm sure that you guys have beat with a dead horse, but I think that that's something that the idea of insurance rates and how does quality forest impact our insurance rates. I know that these are all just
yeah,
I know that
and
that's
I'm
something
not
we've
sure.
all been in our heads,
Yeah.
but
And I'm not sure about the insurance rates. That's something that the commissioner has been working on the last few years, and I'm not sure. We can certainly support some of that, but certainly I think I'm not sure insurance it's something we can talk about, but I'm not sure where that expertise would lie here for us to talk about, unless
for sure.
we were providing that. But there is a really good presentation we had from the wildfire ready watersheds and Northern Water back in those presentations that maybe answered some of those questions that you had, that maybe we all have been in a lot of these meetings, but maybe go back, and I think maybe all of us can go back and look at those and remind ourselves for next week of kind of some of those recommendations that were shared. So yep, ideas. Thank you. That's just exactly what I was thinking. All right. So we're almost, I just want to be mindful of time because we have about, let's just say we have 15 or less minutes, because I want to make sure we talk about next week. So I have Mr. Morgan and then Allison.
Yes, things that we could do legislatively, I was trying to think through. We have on your county here, Commissioner, we have a situation where we do, the Forest Service does a lot of burning, and they have kind of selected to choose to burn large piles, and they're working real hard on the construction of those. And I finished a large contract that we've had for several years, and I happened to just drive down through there and take a lot of pictures of the piles that the Forest Service is now going to burn. And then I come down to, you have the Crystal Lakes burn piles up there. I've been trying to work with those people on how to dispose of them. They're trying to burn them. They'd like to, ideally want to burn them. And I guess I still see the restrictions on burning outside of federal properties as overly restrictive. So I think we still need to do some things and I know a lot of people have air quality questions or burning questions, but I see the U.S. Forest Service burning hundreds of piles and building piles. We're building them, they're burning them every day. And then I see local municipalities and private people unable to burn a pile just across the fence line. And they're looking at spending real money to dispose of that pile. And I still think we have to streamline regulations from the state on pile burning. They need to be more conducive to supporting these people. And I think the Department of Public Safety here in Colorado does really well, but I really think that we need to look hard at the regulations and how they're applied. I think there could be some help there legislatively.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. Commissioner Waters.
To add to that, I think that you are very right. And I think that maybe that's another world in which we start to look at not only, reducing regulation, but also increasing incentives in order to do those wood pile burnings. Because while I personally think, Summit County is very much adjusted to the wood pile burns. We were comfortable with it. We know why they're happening. And our residents, when they see those smoke plumes, they're like, oh, is that a fire? Like, visitors will be like, is that a fire? And our residents are like, oh, no. It's wildfire protection and safety. But I think that that's with trained professionals who are doing that. Any, private citizens, I think that there is a misconception on whether or not they can do that and how they can do that effectively and safely. So I wonder what incentives there are that we can also create to incentivize, regular citizens in addition to the agencies for performing these pile burns.
Well, that's being discussed right now in the prescribed fire discussion. There's a lot of liability and Chapman, and we're also still, so just wanted to share that. So some great ideas. Okay. Thank you, Courtney, for the amazing job that you are doing right now. And maybe we need an update too, Allison, on the prescribed fire subcommittee. Let's see. Because we're working on implementation right now. Let's see. I'm looking and thinking about the wildfire, the work committee, and those slides from Esther and some of that feedback. Allison, do you know, are they looking at changing the fire improvement districts legislation, so they're looking to maybe change that so they can easily pass those? Is that something they're doing legislatively this year?
Not that I know of so far. But the forest improvement districts are just more in conversation right now of the potential of how maybe the first improvement district could be implemented within the state. So as far as what I know, Commissioner, I don't know of anything moving forward on that just yet. Does anyone else on this call know if there's actually?
Oh, I do.
Okay.
The reason I asked that, are they trying to do a pilot one or not? Or what does that look like? Because I do know I was included on an email that was sent to a state senator with specifics from someone on the fire commission that, hey, we need to change this, this, and this, and this to make this easier. So that's why I'm asking, because I have been included in a loop and I kind of went, whoa, wait a minute. Can we talk about this? Because it seems there's moving fast and I'm wondering, what did that look like? And just a heads up for you all, there was going to be a pushback trying to delay again the WUI code recommendations or implementation. I think that is now kind of got tempered down. So just a heads up on that too. So I got that confirmed this week about that's probably not going to be a thing, but it looked like it was going to be a thing. And then it's interesting how that all kind of gears up and then comes down. So I'm thinking about that. Would be nice to know. Allison,
would you like me to explore a little more with the work group between now and our next meeting and come back with some updated information on what's going on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be great, because I know they've been meeting regularly, and I remember I was going to try to hope to keep a pulse on that, and I know you guys are scrambling. And then also, Nina, I know you asked about getting some piling of notes. We're very careful with the Forest Health Council because of the staff that work for DNR. They're also doing major lifts and jobs with the DNR. Allison is been advanced up to a leadership position, and Courtney runs a lot of the furworm and co-swap programs. And so we try to keep our capacity administrative asks of the staff as minimal as we can, because they have a lot above and beyond duties as assigned. So I just wanted to kind of share that as well. That's why we try to do that kind of here. So we're almost out of time. I know I keep saying that. I don't hear a lot of other ideas coming out. So what I'm going to ask you all to do is do a little homework, go back, and one of those presentations that drew your interest and maybe made you go, any of those. Go back and watch part of that meeting, fast forward, go look at the meeting notes. We have lots of minutes and meeting notes, and then just kind of come, even if they're just questions or wonders, like, I wonder about this. I'm curious about that. And then let's come back with a list. And maybe we can all go like around from everyone and see, even if it's just one, something that you're thinking about, and then we can have something more to work on then. And I appreciate, Courtney, we don't have a blank piece of paper anymore. So thank you for that. And then I wanted to just leave a little bit of time because we'll be next week on the 12th. And I think we're all again at 10 hour and a half. We've increased those. Usually we're just an hour, but as we're doing those deliberations, I don't want to cut off good conversation. So we're doing that for the least, the deliberations going to an hour and a half just for everyone's schedule. But I'm wondering now if we can just briefly talk about an update, Courtney, on if you have any updates real quick on the breakfast and how people can sign up. I'll just warn you all, I signed up for everything. I'm even looking at getting a hotel room so I can not have to worry about driving at 5 a.m. or something. So anybody want to bring some updates on that?
Yes, I'm happy to share some updates. Allison and Christine and I have been talking with also some of the experts at the State Forest Service who do more events. And we have a great list. We are in the process of collecting stories from council members that relate to the 5 different themes within the 30-year vision. And we've only had one person submit stories so far. So I'm going to send out a reminder today asking council members to share stories that are already written. So something that might be on your website or a news story that relates to one of the 5 themes. We're talking about getting a poster or like bringing the 30-year vision poster and then doing either a 1-pager front and back or 2 pages front and back that go through the 30-year vision, the Forest Resilience Planning Guide, the tracker, to kind of show what the council has been successful in. We have people signed up to sponsor burritos. Thank you, Mr. Morgan. Coffee, thank you, Julie. And then Pat Dorsey was going to be getting some cookies for us. I still need to call the caterers and get some official updated quotes. The last ones I got were last year. And so I want to follow up with them. We also had a suggestion that maybe Smokey the Bear can join, and that can be something to draw people in to the event. So I think that's the update I have. I know, Jody, you wanted to talk about stickers.
Yeah, and also I just wanted to say a quick note, the American Forester Student Society Association had a Christmas tree sale, and they are way overwhelmed. I'm getting wait for my tree, but I was more than happy to let them do that. But I just wanted to share some of those opportunities like that. Some of those when we talk about workforce and supporting the next generation of land stewards, I just wanted to say maybe, we all can be aware of that. And so I'm putting my money towards supporting them this year. And they had, I think, more than triple their usual response. So I just wanted to share that. But I had a question, because I'd be more than willing to support this, but that picture, it still resonates with me with the artist that drew during our collaboration and deliberations for the vision. If we had that made into a sticker and only had it like a one-time batch, like 100 of them, so we can have them as the Forest Health Council, but also give them to the legislators. I do have a mechanism I could get those made. Is that copyrighted, or is that something that that picture could be put on? It'd be condensed, but it'd be something just to signal kind of that reminder that this vision, and help us with going out and sharing about the vision and the importance of our forests. And I didn't know, since we're still kind of the official release and kind of that plan. It's on the website. We see it everywhere. I'm thinking about the cookies and all that. So I have looked into it. There's a local company in Longmont that does this work and can make them pretty quickly. And so I'm just curious if that's something that also kind of just, we talked about maybe a little swag or something being at the event. So curious about that.
Do you, usually when you hand out that kind of swag or award or whatever, recognition, somebody had to complete a course, a minimum course standard to earn that, supposedly. So maybe if they had completed a basic understanding our forest course, then they could have one of these badge release, whatever you want to call it. Let's have a standard out there. Let's make them earn it by learning something.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If they show up to the breakfast and at least going to come, as far as Health Council, it'd be nice for us to have it so we can promote it. But also, if they're going to come to the breakfast and show up, and maybe as Forest Council members, we can hand them hey, if they ask a question or something, hey, thanks for chatting, here's a sticker or something. I'm not just put them on the table, but have them in our hands. So just an idea. So I'm just wondering if that's something copyrighted.
We
So,
wouldn't have many takers if you told them there was gonna be a quiz afterwards, I suppose, but.
just a question or learn something, that would be, at least come and look at something and eat the burrito as well. That would be great. Commissioner Waters.
Hi guys, I just wanted to, I think this sounds really fun and I can't wait. I have it on my calendar. I plan to be there. I do have to run real quick, but what if we, has there been any discussion around like any of the, like a product made with pine beetle wood, like coaster or something like that? Is that, and I don't know if we have a budget for it.
We
I
have
don't
no
know how
budget. There is
Okay,
no budget.
okay.
So
But I wonder,
that's why
I
we're
mean, I
getting
know
donations from Mr. Morgan and the Wild Turkey Federation and some of us personally donating. So just want to say, yeah, I wish there was,
I
but there is no
do-
budget.
we do have some folks in Summit County, I know for sure, who make small products out of pine beetle. I maybe I'll shoot them a call and just see if they have anything, scraps or anything that might be an elevation for their business as well that will be given the lawmakers. I wonder if they'd be willing to donate. I don't know if there's any rules that I need to follow. Maybe state folks can let me know, but I know there's a limit in price and cost of what we can give, but
Yep.
I'll shoot
That's
some
why the
messages.
stickers and the. So
Yeah,
Allison and
stickers.
Courtney, thank you, Commissioner Waters, and we can bring that back if you want to bring that idea back for next week. That would be great. Courtney and Allison, that was just a question. Is that a copyrighted? But if we hadn't made for the Forest Health Council and not for, is there an issue with that?
Yeah, the imaging is not copyrighted that I know of, and certainly using it for a Forest Health Council event seems extremely appropriate.
Do you have a really high quality image of that, digital image of that sticker, of that painting or the artwork?
Are you imagining the entire, like the rectangle piece?
Yeah.
Yes, I will send you the highest quality. I think I only have one, but I think it's quite high quality, so I will send it to you.
Okay, great.
Um,
Thank you. All right, we're out of time. Any gaps you have, Courtney? Any gaps for the help or for the breakfast so far?
Oh, I think we're still a little early. At some point, we will have people sign up for setup. I think that'll be the thing that's maybe hardest to rally people, since we're going to want to be there at 7 a.m. So maybe a little later in December, we'll send out a sign up sheet to see if people are interested and available to help us set up for the event.
Sounds great. All right. Thank you all. Happy Friday. Have a great weekend. And I'll welcome a motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
Anybody opposed to that? All right, we're adjourned. Have a great weekend,
Thank you.
everyone. Take care. Thank you.